I am very happy to be here with you today to talk about a policy proposal that our administration is working on. I also want to acknowledge that we've been joined by the Council's Chairman of the Committee of Public Safety and Justice, the Ward 6 Council Member Charles Allen. So thank you, Charles, for being here. And I am joined by members of my team, Kevin Donahue, who is the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice, and Brian Ferguson, who is the Director of the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens. So we are here to talk about how more D.C. residents can have access to a clean slate and therefore a fair shot at succeeding here in Washington, D.C. Our new proposal would help to keep our criminal justice system more equitable and more just. It will help give more D.C. residents a second chance. So let me give you a few facts. Each year, more than 40,000 people are arrested in D.C. By our local law enforcement and by federal agencies. And about 1/3 of those arrests are no papered. This means the case is not prosecuted, but a criminal record still exists and could follow that person for the rest of his or her life. Of this group, 10,000 people seek the assistance of the Public Defender Service and other nonprofit organizations to have their records sealed at the D.C. Superior Court. But the process is not simple. Right now, a person must file a petition with the Superior Court that asks a judge to allow for the sealing of their record. The judge then has the discretion to reject the petition, and the entire process can take up to 6 months. And that is if the person has waited the sufficient number of years before filing their petition. So again, the process is long and it's not easy and it's not automatic. It's consuming, time consuming, and it can also be expensive. It also adopts an old and outdated legal mindset that demands individuals prove they deserve to have their records sealed, even if they were never prosecuted or found guilty of a crime. So as a result, many people avoid it. So we know this entire practice is inconsistent with our values of giving deserving people a second chance. So today, we are proposing several reforms that will help tens of thousands D.C. residents seal their records and get a better chance at employment in Washington and participating in the prosperity of our city. So we're going to talk today about how we propose to mandate the automatic sealing of records as they relate to non-convictions, rather than require a person to file a petition and hope that the judge agrees. Secondly, we are proposing to shorten the amount of time a person must wait before they can seek to have their records sealed. And lastly, we are proposing a third-party review of the types of convictions eligible for sealing by having an independent group of legal experts provide us with recommendations. I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor Donahue to talk about more about our proposal, the work that we have to do before presenting it to the council. Then you'll hear from Director Ferguson and Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me provide some background on what record sealing means and some more detail about the proposal the mayor is laying out. So let me start with some facts to just inform everyone about record sealing. So everyone who's arrested has a record. In the district, we estimate this is about 1 in 4 of our residents have or have had an arrest record at one point. Currently, someone who is arrested but never convicted, as the mayor says, no matter what the charge is, can get their record sealed, but they must wait often several years to do so and petition the court. Some people who are convicted can eventually get their record sealed depending on the charge and waiting a period of time. And to give you a definition of what it means to seal a record, sealing a record means that an individual's arrest or conviction, if it's eligible, cannot be accessed publicly. It does remain available for law enforcement courts and some very selective professions and employers that deal with special populations such as children's, but generally it is not publicly accessible. For any felony or misdemeanor non-conviction, so someone who is arrested but not convicted, that person has to wait up to 4 years to request that their record be sealed, even though there was not a conviction. For an eligible conviction, so someone who has been convicted, depending on the charge, some charges are never eligible for sealing. Those that are, an individual must wait up to 8 years of being conviction-free after the end of their sentence or supervision. So that gives you some sense of what the current context is. As the mayor said, our laws are outdated, our value systems have progressed, and the mayor wants our laws to reflect what our value systems are and what research has demonstrated everywhere, that records hold people back for opportunities to move forward and do not have an impact on public safety, and in fact can negatively impact public safety if someone has a record that does not let them get employment in which they are reasonably entitled to. So what we're proposing, as the mayor mentioned, is 4 broad goals. First is to eliminate the administrative burden on individuals by making record sealing for no papers and non-convictions automatic and automatically done by Superior Court. Now, this is a complicated issue, and we look forward to working with the courts to do this in an expeditious way. Second, to reduce the waiting times people have to wait, and for those with non-convictions to drastically reduce or eliminate those waiting periods. And finally, as the mayor mentioned, have an independent legal experts look at what is now a list of convictions in which someone is never eligible for sealing. That current list currently includes things that are very violent in nature, but it also includes a number of nonviolent misdemeanors and felonies that if someone is convicted of it, it can never be sealed again. So we know from talking to people in the city that the existence of a criminal record, no matter how old or how many years have passed since the arrest occurred, can hold someone back from getting a job, getting housing, getting access to credit. This is also not an issue unique to D.C. As many as 1 in 3 U.S. adults have had at some point a record of an arrest. And D.C. and other states and cities are now looking at revising our sealing laws. So in the coming weeks, we'll be working with council members, our criminal justice partner at the local and federal levels, and advocates on crafting legislation that stays true to the policy framework that the mayor has laid out. And I'm grateful for Mayor Bowser for coming forward and starting this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Donahue, and a special thanks to you, Mayor Bowser, for your leadership on this issue and for your continued support of the district's returning citizens. I'm proud to live in a city and work for an administration whose DC values drive it to prioritize and to actively seek the removal of barriers to success for all DC residents, especially returning citizens. These proposed record sealing reforms will have a huge impact on thousands of men and women, both inside the district and outside, whose arrest records are currently holding them back from being able to potentially obtain employment, professional licensing, education, or housing, often without even a conviction. The reforms proposed today are for the young mother of 2 in Ward 5 that called my office 2 weeks ago because she had been terminated after her employer conducted a retroactive background check and found a single marijuana possession arrest from 2014 for which she only received community service. Therefore, a very good friend of mine who was having a terrible time trying to renew his home health aid license because of a fight that he was arrested for but never convicted over 6 years ago. These reforms are for all of the residents of the district, wards 1 through 8, who would otherwise have to endure a long and very confusing process in order to seal a criminal record that has no bearing or reflection on who they are now or what they seek to become if given the chance to play on a level playing field. The reforms proposed by Mayor Bowser today will, for thousands, seek to level that playing field and prevent the collateral consequences that all too often come along with having a criminal record. Collateral consequences that can unfortunately last a lifetime if we don't do what's right. So that's why, once again, Mayor, I commend you on your leadership of the returning citizen community, and we thank you and are looking forward to this becoming law.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. I want to give the mayor a lot of credit here. These are difficult conversations, or tough conversations, but I'm very grateful that she and her whole team, working in partnership, is really trying to think this through. You heard Director Ferguson really put a human touch and a human face to the real consequences here. When we think about what I think about my job in the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, there's two aspects there: justice and public safety. And when we think about the thousands of our DC neighbors who are trying to reenter and reenter successfully, we know that the barriers exist. And I think what we're trying to do is outline solutions, whether it's a job, whether it's housing, whether it's education. We know that for that individual, if we can remove those barriers, they will be more successful. And from a public safety perspective, we know that when they are more successful, they are less likely to reoffend. And we also, therefore, have a safer community and a safer city. So I think this is the right step for us to be taking. There's a couple of bills that the council is considering. As the chair of the committee, what I'm going to be doing is this fall, I'd like to be able to hold a hearing working with the mayor and her team to help think through how we move forward with this. But this is an issue that is timely, it's important, it's urgent, and I give you a lot of credit. I appreciate your leadership in working on this, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you. Okay, we'll take any questions. We'll start with the press on topic. Yes, Peter.
2015, you proposed, facing a surge in homicides, you proposed a way that would make it easier for the ordinary citizen to track criminal cases through the criminal justice system as a way of holding each piece accountable for some of the violence on the streets. How do you square that now with proposing to seal thousands of court documents that could be used for tracking those crimes?
Well, certainly, Peter, we're not going to do anything that would prevent us from holding every part of our system accountable. And certainly there are many ways to do that. I think you know that we have been very focused on making sure we can hold our police accountable, for example, with body cameras, an independent police complaints board, and we encourage our residents to avail themselves of it. We have worked with our CJCC, for example, and I'll give the Post a lot of credit for getting into some records that were harder to find as it relates to convictions and sentencing. And we're still wanting to make sure that the convictions and sentencing are that we can hold everybody in the system accountable for that. We do, however, also know that both justice and public safety are served when people are not held back from employment and housing and access to credit. And our purpose here today is to make sure, especially we started talking about the non-convictions, non-charges, and we're going to ask a group of independent thinkers to help us think through the convictions. So including misdemeanors and felonies, to see if some eligible crimes should be added to that list that could also be considered for sealing. Yes, Sam.
I heard Deputy Mayor Donahue talking about there were some cases where the crimes weren't that significant that they couldn't get the record expunged. What cases are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about sealing, and there are many misdemeanors that are eligible for sealing, and some that are not, that are nonviolent in nature. And Kevin, I'm going to ask Kevin to talk to you a little bit about those. There are dozens, but.
So the way to think about this is think in two groups. There's folks who have a record who are never convicted, and right now they can all get their record sealed, but they have to wait years and go through hurdles. We want to eliminate the time frame and make it automatic. For those who were convicted, there's a list of offenses for convictions in which you're never eligible to seal the record, no matter what you do with your life after serving time. Right now, in the felonies, there's only one felony in which is ever eligible to be sealed, and that's felony failure to appear. So felony drug possession, all the way through more serious offenses, are never currently ever eligible to seal if you're convicted. The misdemeanors, there's a list of what's called misdemeanors where if you're convicted, and we can give you a copy of that list, or anyone who wants it later, if you let us know after this. But there's a few dozen lists, and if you're ever convicted of one of those misdemeanors, you can't ever have that record sealed. Some of those misdemeanors include violent misdemeanors, but there's a lot of nonviolent misdemeanors as well. An example is defrauding a utility company, a building code violation, actually. There are things that really surprised us when we looked at the list of what, for someone convicted of that, you're never eligible to have it sealed. So what the mayor decided is that rather than us pick and choose, perhaps, and have disagreement, let's have a group of legal experts look at this with the lens of what we know from research and our own values in 2017 and see how and where we can update that list so that people who have convictions have more opportunities to have those sealed.
Tom.
Where's the U.S. Attorney's Office on this? I assume you've talked with it. I mean, sometimes they say they don't prosecute a case where they should have. It was quite serious, but they maybe missed some evidence, and then that case is sealed. I mean, they still have access to the records. Is that correct?
Yes, they would still have access to sealed records.
Weighed in on this, the U.S. Attorney's Office at all? Or is it
well, we're kind of early in the process of reaching out to all of our law enforcement partners, U.S. Attorney, our Attorney General, who's responsible for the prosecution of for minors, and the court system will be an active player, police department, and so we will have that opportunity certainly among us as we develop the proposal. Our returning citizens community, our human rights office, we have a number of players who we expect to weigh in on the final draft.
I may have missed it. Is there a jurisdiction, a state, or another significant place that does what you're trying to do?
Yes, we think we are certainly on the forefront of restoring the ability of our citizens to get jobs and housing and access to credit, but we're not the first. Actually, just yesterday, the state of California moved very aggressive and progressive record sealing legislation. It was approved. Hold on. Anything off? Any other questions? All questions. I'm available for all questions. Yes.
Would marijuana be one of those syllable charges?
For misdemeanors, and I don't know where it stands presently, so let me ask Kevin if it's one of those included misdemeanor convictions that's eligible. It will certainly be a topic of conversation. Felony drug possession, we're going to put that in front of the group to give us some recommendations.
I believe that currently marijuana possession is eligible for record. Small amounts of marijuana possession are eligible for record sealing. Larger amounts are not if you're convicted. So what we're proposing is that we want the waiting time to be reduced. And there are offenses when we looked at them that we'd be predisposed to really take a look at, but we want an independent group to look at probably the lower hanging fruit and also look at things that would stretch us. So that's what the role of forming that group is, to look at the whole list and see where and what offenses should we add to the list. Yes.
I'll say one thing. I've been home for over 20 years, and I believe that people like me who've been doing great things in the community, I have a felony drug charge. My case should be sealed, and it stopped me from doing a lot of things in my life. So I think people who've come home and they're valuable to our community, I think they should take that into account. People who have felony convictions, who are no threat and didn't even commit an act of violence. Those offenses, my charge is not sealable. So I think that's something that definitely should take a look at.
Thank you. Okay, Rev, you want to say something?
I did. I want to thank you as a...
Will you guys read there for the microphone?
No, I'll repeat it.
I'm the Reverend Dr. E. Gail Anderson Holiness. I pastor Christ Our Redeemer AME Church, and I'm also a Howard-trained lawyer. I want to just commend you and your staff for just the word that you chose, clean state. And clean slate. And I suppose that this is where the separation of church and state comes, because we serve a God of a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance. And so that allows individuals to come back and be great citizens and be a part of this process. And so from the clergy community, those of us who've shown up today, we were really impressed with the clean slate that you're offering for the citizens of the District of Columbia. So we want to say thank you.
Thank you, Rev, and I appreciate that. And I also want to acknowledge just the great work of the Mayor's Commission on Religious Affairs for coming together around what probably none of us expected, but to how to defend DC values as it relates to freedom of religion and the protection of our diversity. But let me just put a fine point on why we're here. And Brian talked a little bit about this. We go around the city all day, every day, in all 8 wards, and we encounter people who need work and want to work. Some folks have made some mistakes, and they have paid the price for it, but they shouldn't have to pay the price for the rest of their lives. And we know that when people get back to work, their children do better in school, they're healthier, and we increase our opportunities of having just peaceful neighborhoods in every neighborhood in Washington, D.C. It is not an uncomplicated process, I hope that you've gathered from our discussion, but we know that we're going about it, and we will go about it in a thoughtful way. Our goals are to make sure that people have every opportunity to get a fair shot in this town. We will never, ever propose anything that we think would be a detriment to the public safety of Washington, D.C. So let me thank you for coming, and we're going to need you for, you heard the council members say we're going to have a hearing, so we're going to need you to be an active part of this discussion. Thank you. Yeah.
There's no legislation yet, is that correct?
That's correct.
Soon.
Yes, very soon. This month, we'll present it. All right, thank you, everybody.